Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast. My name is Coach Scott. I'll be your host today. It is Tuesday, June 22nd. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I am back from Des Moines. I know what you're saying right away. You're saying, what happened to the blue shirt? And you know what? Look, it was a long weekend. I brought every single blue coach shirt, Team Ordinary coach shirt that I had, and it was like 95 degrees out there some days. So I had to do a nice rotation of the shirts. I made it through all of them. I got home yesterday and I just had to dump them all into the laundry, so they're being cleaned right now. And I went for the optional gray shirt. I was going to look through and try to find another, maybe an Ordinary Marathon shirt or something, but figured I'd rep the hometown, East Longmeadow, and wearing the gray shirt for today. So yeah, we are back from Des Moines. Now, the first thing, before we get talking about Des Moines and the trip to Des Moines, I want to thank everyone for reaching out. Anyone who reached out to me to offer condolences on my dog and the passing of my dog Jake. Who I got to tell you, I'm still processing it. I know it's a dog, and I know some of you guys understand the pet thing. Some of you guys are like, yeah, it's a member of your family, and just having him around every single day for the last 13 years, and then all of a sudden one day he's gone. It's been strange. This is like really. It's an interesting kind of foray into grief for me. I don't really, I haven't really lost someone who I've seen every single day for years and years and years, before. So it's kind of like I don't know, it's like a new feeling, I guess, but, and it's hard. It's like, there's nothing anyone can say to make me feel better about it. I know you guys, I do appreciate people reaching out. But it's just like there's a void missing, there's just something there. And I'll tell you, I got home from Des Moines and I opened the door, and right away, I was looking for him, because it's just, that's what I do every time I open that door, and he wasn't there. So it was, it was obviously sad. And little things. Last night I came downstairs, I'm working, I got some new technology down here for our live stream, and I'm trying to put it all together. And I went to go upstairs, and I had left the door wide open. Now, normally, that means Jake would come down the stairs, and he wasn't walking well the last few times, the last few months. So I would always make sure to close that door, and now the door was open, and I was like, my initial thought right away was, oh my God, Jake's going to come downstairs, close the door. We used to be scared because the baby would come downstairs. Now she's kind of good on stairs. I was more worried about the dog. And so as soon as I saw the door open, I'm like, no, Jake. And then I was like, oh. So it's kind of like one of those. This morning we made, I make ham. I dice up ham for omelets. Ellie loves them. And I started dicing up the ham. And if you ever had a ham steak, right? It's like, it's a big, oval of ham. And on the outside is like, that kind of inedible part. It's sort of like skin. I don't know if it's skin or whatever it is, but it's not really, I guess you could eat it, but it's not, I don't like it. I don't eat it. What I do is I cut that part off and I chop it into little pieces and I throw it in Jake's bowl. So I cut it off and I chopped it into pieces, just not even thinking. And I grabbed them and I turned around and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I haven't thrown away food like that. I don't throw away that, I haven't done that in years. So it's a little bit, you have those moments where it's a little bit sad. It's a little bit like, you just remember, and like I said, there's a void there. It's just something that I'm just so used to. And I don't know if it's not, people say, oh, you'll get over it. It's not that I want to get over it. I don't want to get over it. You just you want to have that memory. You don't want it to leave. So it's kind of really sad. Now we were down, this is kind of a strange story I'll tell you next. We were down at, Ironman Des Moines over the weekend. I went to watch Mike and Aaron race, and I'm not going to talk too much about their races. We're going to have them on the podcast at the end of this week, and I'll let them tell the stories of their races and their opinions on the venue and that kind of thing, and just our experience. We really had an awesome weekend. It was a great time we had out in Des Moines. Des Moines, by the way, great city. I left last week and I made like the comment like, oh, I can't wait to get to Des Moines. And that was like, that sentence has never been said before. But I gotta be honest, I can't wait to go back to Des Moines. It was awesome. The downtown area was really, it was hopping. It was nice. It was restaurants and bars and like wide cities. They had a big farmer's market there one day. The Ironman Village was there. It was really cool. We had a really great time there. And yeah, I would certainly go back and visit Des Moines. It was a great city. Felt very clean, very safe. I liked it a lot. We'll talk about that more either later this podcast or next podcast. But on race day, it was raining. It was raining a bit, and I was standing there with my umbrella at the transition area. Mike and Erin were getting ready, and I was just being a good Sherpa, waiting. If they had anything they wanted to give me or give me to hold during the race, or if they forgot something and they wanted to tell me, I could try to run back and get it. That kind of thing. And I was just kind of standing there, and this woman came up, and she was next to me. Her husband was racing, and we're sitting there with our umbrellas, and we started chatting. She had this platinum blonde hair, and a moth landed in her hair, or the moth just was there. And I said to her, I said, "Oh, there's a moth in your hair." Because I didn't want to be the guy just like smacking her hair. You don't want to just smack the moth out of the hair. That gets weird, especially with her husband standing right there. Nobody needs that visual. I go to jail. So I told her there was a moth in her hair. And instead of kind of like, I think most people would kind of just try to do this. She grabbed her hair, she pulled it over, and she said, "Oh, it was pure white moth." And she says, "Oh, this is great." And she grabs the moth, and I said, "Well, what is it? Good luck?" And she says, "No." She says, "A white moth means that the white moth is someone that you know who just passed, who's back to visit you." And I was like, I need that moth. Can you give me that moth? And she did. She gave me the white moth. I put it on my shoulder. Eventually, the moth flew up into my umbrella, and he kind of hung out there. And I walked with the moth, thinking about my dog the whole time. Walked with the moth from that transition area all the way to the swim. He stayed with me for about 15 minutes. And at one point, I just kind of looked up to check him out, to see if he's going to hang out with me all day. And he was gone. But it's kind of good. It was interesting. I never heard that. I've never heard that said, so I don't know if it's a real thing or not. But I'm certainly superstitious, and I went with it. I kind of just went with it. The story gets weirder, though. I know you guys are saying, "Oh, that's no big deal." The moth. The story gets weirder. All right. So Steph picks me up at the airport yesterday, coming back from Des Moines, and I'm a little bit late. Thank you, Chicago. Thank you, American Air. And we'll talk about that in a second. And so Steph takes me out to dinner. We sit down at dinner, and I'm like, "I got to tell you a story about this moth." So I told her the story about the moth, and she starts crying. And I was like, "Why are you crying? Like, what's I know it's kind of a neat story, but it's not." And what happened was, on Sunday morning here, Ellie was playing in the living room, and there was a white moth in our living room. And she was calling it a butterfly, and they were saying, "Oh, it's just a butterfly." But no, they didn't want to explain the difference between a moth and a butterfly to a 2-year-old. But it was Sunday morning, right around the same time. A white moth was in my house and visited my daughter. And man, it's kind of, I don't know that I necessarily believe in that stuff, but when you hear stories like that, it's kind of weird. It's just kind of weird. And maybe it was my dog visiting us. I don't know. I like to think so. It was kind of cool. So yeah, just a weird story. I'll tell you a little bit about American Airlines. Kidnappers. That's what they are. American Airlines kidnapped me. That's what they did. Well, I'll tell you the difference between small town America, and I love small town America. I love small cities like Des Moines, cities that are just kind of like well maintained and not overly huge, New York, Chicago, whatever. So my flight left Des Moines, connected in Chicago to Springfield, to Hartford Airport. And I got into Des Moines Airport, very much like Hartford Airport, actually. Hartford might be a little more busy. Des Moines had had one terminal, kind of like two lengths of the terminal. You either go left down the hall or right down the hall. I love walking airports. I can sit there and walk the airports all day long for whatever reason, whether it's people watching or just checking everything out. Just that feeling, sort of like that excitement of getting on a plane, I guess. Not that I don't really like flying either, but I kind of I like being in the airport terminal for whatever reason. I don't mind it. I kind of like walking around in it. I count my steps. I always get good steps when I'm in the airport. And I'm kind of walking back and forth in Des Moines. and it's just clean and nice. And I sat down at this coffee bar, and this woman was working there, and we wound up chatting because there's no one there. There's not many people there, so we had a nice conversation. I drank my coffee and went and headed to Chicago. Plane was on time. There's like 3 planes leave every hour. You look at the board. It's like oh, my plane is third on the board, but it doesn't leave for another hour. So, it's strange that way, but it's not strange. It's nice. It's nice because it's not all rushy rush. It's not people like screaming, running all over the place. It's not crazy. Then you go to Chicago, and they're like their plane leaves every like 33 seconds or something. Like they're trying to keep setting the record for busiest airport. I know at one point it was O'Hare was the busiest airport in the world, but I don't know if that still holds. Might as well. I got off the plane anyway, and I'm in Terminal L, which just, makes you think that means there's Terminal A through K, right? And I'm in L, so it was at least up to L, if not further. It kind of was like, I walked off the plane, and this whole side of the terminal, none of the stores were open, of course, because it's a big city, and of course nothing works, by the way, this is like, I'm going to rant a little bit on big cities. I don't enjoy them. I just don't. I like being in New York to visit, and I live there. I would never want to live there again. Don't ask me why. Anyway, I like visiting. I like going. I just wouldn't want to live there. So I had to walk down the other end of the terminal, and there's like one place, and I'm hungry. It's lunchtime, and they don't feed you on the plane anymore like they used to. 3-hour flight. You'd think that they would give you something. They give you a little bag of pretzels or something, and so I got to get something to eat. So I found, one kind of like 2 restaurants. One was kind of like shishi weird, and I didn't want to go in it. And of course, McDonald's, which I don't do. And there was one sort of like bar restaurant. Seat yourself, of course. So you walk in, you got to find your seat. There's no one there to greet you, no one to say hello. The menu is a card that's put on the table. You have to scan it with your phone. You order, you pay on the phone, everything on the phone. Of course, they still suggest you make a 20% tip, even though I didn't talk to anybody. As I was ordering, I ordered my beer. I went to go pay for it on the thing with my card, and the beer showed up, like at the table. The lady just dropped it off in a plastic cup, of course, because they can't trust us with glass. $12 beer, plastic cup. No one ever said a word to me. 10 minutes later, my salad came over. I ordered a chicken Caesar salad. That came, still tipped 20% for the wonderful service, the wonderfully pleasureful service. It's just miserable. I couldn't stand it. So my plane's supposed to leave at 1:23 or something, like maybe it was 1:32. I don't remember. The plane in Des Moines, the wheels left, and I looked at at my watch. It was 1 minute early. It left 1 minute early. That's small town for you. Big city. Truth is that we were supposed to board at 1:09, and we were boarding at 1:09. That was fine. That was good. Got on the plane, started to back up. The plane started moving. We start going towards the runway. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm looking down. I'm like, all right, we're about 12, 13 minutes late. I'm just trying to, in my brain, I'm like testing it. I'm like, oh, let's see when the wheels take off here, because big city airport is never going to be on time like little city airport. And then the plane stops, and the captain gets on. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, there is some storms in our path and this evening, and unfortunately they're not, because of the storms, we're not able to take off. We're going to wait for the storms to clear, and then we're going to go in, and we're just going to sit here and wait for an hour and 40 minutes. An hour and 40 minutes. Now, they knew. They knew, and in this crowded big city airport, they needed to back us up off the gate so another plane could get in. And to a certain degree, I get it. But we sacrificed so much. This is, as far as I'm concerned, an hour and 40 minutes held pretty much against your will, right? You can't leave. You can't leave. In a metal tube during a pandemic, everyone's wearing masks, mind you. I don't know why. At that point, why are we wearing masks? They let you take them down to eat and drink anyway. You're just sucking up everyone else's air throughout the entire whatever hours we're going to be on this plane. I don't know why we're wearing masks on planes anymore. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. Ridiculous. We're all sucking our own carbon dioxide in for hours. And we sat on that. We sat there about an hour and 45 minutes. and it was miserable. No Wi-Fi, by the way. Um, I was trying to text Stephanie. My phone was running out of juice. You know, some planes have the plugs, the outlets there, so you could at least keep your stuff charged. Nope, no outlets. The plane was probably from 1950. I don't know. American Airlines, right? They got some old. You know, they didn't. Every new plane I know has like the little TV screen. They didn't have any screen, so you know, it's just low class flying. All the first class, by the way, they're getting served drinks. They're getting served everything. They're laughing, giggling, playing music, stuff like that. All the plebs in the back, they're like, "Would you like a sip of water?" And I'm serious. Oh, would you like a sip of water? It's like, no, I don't want water, because then I'm gonna have to pee. And when I decide to go pee, then you're gonna take off, and then you're gonna tell me to sit down. I'm gonna sit here and pee myself. I'm telling you, at a certain point, I feel like it's just kidnapping. It's just, and look, I know I'm an adult and I should maybe take this better with less drama, but I'm not doing it. I'm not going to. I feel like you're just in this metal tube stuck in the middle of a runway. Obviously not in the middle of a runway, but you can't go anywhere. I would have rather just let us stay in the damn terminal. I love the terminal. I love walking in the terminal. I love people watching. I don't even, you know what? Even the silly place that I sat at that I didn't talk to a waitress and still tipped her 20%. I would have just rather hung out there than in the metal tube for an extra hour and 40 minutes, when you know that they knew. They knew when they pulled that plane out that we were going to sit there, and they did it anyway. You know, and it's one of those things where I would love to be able to sit here and say, I will never fly American Airlines again. But it doesn't matter, because what I do is I go to Expedia or whatever other app you use, and whatever the cheapest flight is, it's a commodity. You just take it anyway, right? So in 6 months or whatever it is, when I fly again, I will just forget all about it, and I'll never, you know. And we walked off the plane, the pilot's smiling, goodbye, thank you guys for flying. And I'm like, you know, and all the passengers like, oh, bye, thank you. I'm like, does anyone remember that this guy kept us in the plane for 2 hours? Anyone remember that? Thank you. You're welcome, right? Yeah, please, guy. Thanks a lot. Other than that, the trip was great. I know. Let me rant for like a good 15 minutes on the podcast, and let's talk about something else. All right. Let's talk about something else. All right. Let's talk. I will give you sort of my little take on Ironman Des Moines 70.3. The story was, and our story, the story of the race is that it was super hot when we got there. Again, 95 degrees, and probably 100% humidity, really, really hot, oppressively hot. To the point where, you definitely have to like factor that in your race planning and stuff like that. We were out walking around trying to get used to it a little bit, but man, it was bad out there. The night before the race, the weather report was always thunderstorms, scattered thunderstorms, possible thunderstorms. And it turns out, you figured that the weathermen are going to be wrong. They were right. Even like the night before, I was looking at the radar. I'm going, how do they know that this little system is going to come with this system and go up? And it did. And we woke up, we were supposed to leave. We were supposed to leave the hotel at 4:15. That was the plan. And we woke up earlier than that. And we got a message from Ironman saying that it was thunder and lightning. And we got a message saying that they were going to hold off until 7:30 to stay sheltered, and that they would, announce whatever change they were going to do then. So it was still raining and raining. It rained all morning, and it was, you're sitting there watching it. And I got to tell you, I am not a rain person. I don't like riding in the rain. I don't like running. I don't like doing anything in the rain. I don't train in the rain. And I get it. I understand that it may rain on race day and you should just get out and practice it here and there. But I really don't enjoy it. And, it's hard for me in front of the two athletes that I coach. I'm trying to stay positive. You can't control the weather kind of thing. And if they send you out there, you got to be ready. But it's hard. And at some point, I know I'm pretty sure that Mike was like, I'd rather just not even race at this point. Aaron's take was, maybe they'll cut the course here and there and they'll make it shorter. And at least we'll get something in, even if it's just like a sprint level thing, maybe we'll get something in. 7:30 rolled around, and, we were hearing some weird rumors that maybe it would start at noon, but they wound up starting the race at 9:40 for the pros, 9:50 for the age groupers. And what they did was they cut the bike from 56 miles to about 27. And they removed the big hill. There was one big hill. Going out, it was a huge downhill. Coming back, it was a nice climb. Not super steep, it seemed, but long enough and steep enough to really it would have been work. It was going to be real work to get up and down that hill. And then the swim and the run were untouched. And man, I got to tell you, so we walked down there in the rain. It was miserable. The one thing I will tell you that I was not happy with this race is that they make you park about a mile away from transition, and the walk is it's too much. It's too much. They either should have some kind of shuttle going back and forth from down there or something, because it's just too much to ask these athletes to walk all this way to get to their bikes. And I know they're athletes and they should be in shape enough to walk a mile before, but it's just annoying. It's frustrating, and you just don't want to do it, especially in the rain. That was one of the frustrating parts of the race. I tell you, the swim venue itself was great. I thought it was great. I know that some of the athletes complained, and again, we'll talk to Mike and Aaron about that. Some of the athletes complained it was too crowded. They didn't give them wide enough lane. What they did was it was wetsuit optional because the water was kind of warm. And they basically, if you weren't wearing a wetsuit, you went out first, and they timed everyone in stages. So you self-seated. Then they let all the wetsuit people in. The problem was you let the slower swimmers go out last, and then you let the faster wetsuit people go in, and they just swam over top all the slower swimmers. And there was a lot of complaints about that. People getting kicked. Again, the kayakers being fairly tight to the buoys, so that's your lane that you swim in. You couldn't really notice it from spectator. As a spectator, we were really far away, so we couldn't tell who our athletes were. We were trying to look for them, but there's really no way to spot them and find them. You're just you wind up going to the end and just sitting there and waiting for them to come in and checking your tracker. And the tracker is always hit and miss. The tracker is very convenient when it's working and it's working well, but when it's not working, it's like, I had athletes that I was following, and then they just fell off the tracker, and I had to put them back in. And I was kind of actively doing that throughout the day. And I was following about 5 or 6 people. I was following Sarah Bauman, Matt Osblum. They were out there doing the race. I was following Dan Connor and Anna O'Donnell, two people that we met when we were out there. Dan, we wound up adopting, I think. We met Dan at the hotel the day before the race, and his flights were all messed up, and he had no rental car. And he's like, "Guys, can you please drop me at the race tomorrow? Can you drive me to the race?" He's like, "I'll pay for gas. I'll do, basically, I'll do anything. And I think that was the worst mistake he ever made, because we just haven't let him go. We haven't let him go since then. So he's our adoptive athlete. But I tell you, every time you go down to watch one of these events, it is inspiring, and it's inspiring to see everyone from the pros. And when I tell you, there were people, because of the shortened bike course, there were people still coming in on the swim when the pros were going out on the run. That's how crazy this was. I was standing, there's a little tunnel that you had to run through near transition, and the swimmers were coming in one way and the runners were running out the other, and the spectators were kind of in the middle, and it was like a loop, and the spectators were and we were standing there in the middle waiting for Mike and Aaron to come in, and I was kind of pretty close to the run out. And someone said to me, "Oh, be careful, that's the run out." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, come on. Those guys are going out on the bike. Like, they got to go out on the bike." And 2 seconds later, a guy ran, the leader ran by me. And I was like, "Oh my God." And I checked the watch. I checked the tracker to see, did they forget to do the bike? Like, did they just go out on the run? Maybe they canceled the bike? No, he went out. He biked 27 miles in a little over an hour, and was on the run, and multiple pros on the run before some of the age groupers were leaving the water for the swim. It was incredible. And it's just, you just see these athletes one after the other, just coming in, going out, whatever, just facing the adversity that they had to face with the morning, the mental toughness it took to kind of gather yourself and show up and be there and in the right frame of mind to compete after all that rain, being in that wet, muddy, transition area that, it's not a fun thing to do. And to overcome that stuff and get out there and race well takes mental toughness. And it's very interesting to watch. At a certain point during the race, the clouds parted and the sun came out, and it came out in brutal fashion. It got hot fast, and man, I took Mike had his bike pump, and I took it back to the car. I walked a mile to the car. I walked a mile back, and my back of my neck was all sunburned. It's still sunburned. It hurts. And so think about them out on the bike. Probably, I think most of them no sunscreen either. They came in, there were sunscreen stations for the run, but I didn't see sunscreen stations going out on the bike. So I don't know if there were, and maybe I just didn't see them. But man, if those guys were out on that bike course, again, we drove the bike course. There was no cover. There was no shade, no nothing. You're out in the middle of a highway, with nothing. So the sun was brutal. The sun was brutal. And then and it was brutal for the run for pretty much everybody. So, yes, they cut the bike course down. Nonetheless, even though they didn't go a full 70.3, I tell you, it took 70.3 worth of guts and determination to make it through that course. And that medal was certainly well earned on that day for everyone who finished. Congratulations. I think it was amazing. Amazing for you guys to finish. And I tell you, as a coach, it's like watching your kids race, man. I've never been there for an Ironman. This is my first time being there for my athletes to watch them do a 70.3. And I was like, it was just pacing and nerves and just hoping that they do well and hoping that they're out there, using their training, being in the right frame of mind, attacking in the right spots, doing everything that we said. When we talked about our race plans for each of them, following them on the course, trying to see them at different points. And when I did see them, seeing the smiles on their face and knowing they were going to do it, knowing they were getting done. Again, I'm going to let them tell their stories when we have them on the podcast later in the week. But man, I'm proud of both of them, proud of both Mike and Aaron. We had a great weekend, a great time. It was awesome watching you guys compete, and inspiring. And we know both of you guys, we have work to do. But this was a great time, and this was a great race in a great town. We'll talk about it more when I have Mike and Aaron on the podcast in a few days. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I know I didn't really talk a lot today. My training, I didn't really do much. I walked about, I think I took like 24,000 steps on race day, which is kind of like, those are my steps when I do a half marathon. Like when I run a half marathon, that's the kind of step number that I have. So, that was kind of like my training for the weekend, but I'm getting back at it today. I'm going to get out there and get some running done. We're going to be back 5 a.m. Warrior starts again tomorrow. I'll be back on that. I'm trying to set up our new live stream today. That's what I'm doing the rest of the afternoon. So hopefully that's up and running, and hopefully we get that going, and it works nice. It works well for tomorrow morning and beyond. I'm telling you, I like this team. I like you guys. I love the discussion group. Everyone out there cheering the athletes on through the day. And man, it was just a great experience this weekend. So thank you all for making it worthwhile. And, great for this coach. It was a great experience. Very proud of my athletes, Aaron and Mike. And we'll talk to them next podcast. And, again, if you want to support the podcast, if you want to support the team, head on over to patreon.com/ordinarymarathoner. Become a patron. We'll put your name over on the scroll. It's going to come up in about 5 minutes, and we'll use that. We always use those funds to help improve the podcast as best that we can. Again, thank you guys for listening, for tuning in, and remember, every day is an ordinary day unless you make it extraordinary. So get after it, guys.